Hey James, how you doing?
Great, Ed. How are you? You know, you've always told me to call Ed. So it's
Yes, no, certainly, because
been a
it's
couple years since
what
I've
I
seen you.
right.
Yeah.
It's been a few years. Yeah, Ed is usually what I go by. It's a lot easier for people, and as long as I know you're calling me, that's the most important part.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the Ozark Mountain Publishing Author Series, and today I have a chance to talk to you about your latest book called Each of You. And
Yeah.
I'm excited to ask you about it. But as I
I
do
have it
with all
right
the
here. I'm going to put
authors,
it up front of you if that's all right.
yeah, that works.
Yeah.
And so, before we begin, I would like to first start out with a little bit of your background information and basically what led up to this book, and then we'll get into the book info.
Well, Ed, I think most of my readers already know about my story, but for those that don't and that are new to my story, I've written an ever-developing book series about things like getting the best out of life that you want and understanding your spiritual intuition, your spiritualness, your spirituality within you, and how that can keep you strong and fear and strong and away from fear and doubt and all the things that the ugliness of the world tries to push on us. But anyways, as far as my background goes, of the people that don't know me, I was a financial advisor for 25 years following my stay in the United States Air Force. Got out of there and then stumbled into the financial services industry, and I spent 25 years there as a financial advisor. And in 25th year, I made a terrible mistake. It was a securities violation, and at the time that this was going on, uh, this was in 2006. There were billionaires who were in the financial services really getting caught doing stupid things and going to prison for it. Well, I made a stupid mistake, a security violation. It was really very, kind of thing. But I was wrong. And I lost my case in court, and I was sentenced to 10 years in prison. So while in prison, in fact, I explained this whole story, what happened in the first book called The Master of Everything. It's the pilot, I like to say, of the ever developing series that I'm writing. Well, I explained the whole thing, and I was sent to an Ohio prison for 10 years. I actually ended up getting out after 8 years with a lot of hard work. But while I was in prison, what I was doing was writing every day about what I was seeing. And I ran into stumbled into a publication while in prison, which was the only publication that would ever see in my time in prison, called A Course in Miracles. And all my life, my 25 years of in practice as a financial advisor, I was always into motivational type of readings and things. And my favorite authors and such that I would read, I would always, for example, Wayne W. Dyer was one of my favorites, and Deepak Chopra, and on others. And I'd always remember them mentioning a quote from A Course in Miracles. And I wondered, what is A Course in Miracles? So I never looked up, and it wasn't like me to procrastinate on anything like this. But I figured, well, someday I'm going to have to look this up. So that was while in my years in business. I had a couple of divorces. My life was just going terrible for me. And I ran up against this brick wall. I met the wrong people. I fell into a situation where I crossed this line in the securities industry. And I'm not to make any excuses because I don't. I should have known better not to go there to where I did, but I did, and so I paid the price. So I lost my case in court. I was found guilty, and I was sentenced to 10 years. Went to prison. So I decided, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to start writing, and I'm going to figure out what I can write about. I don't know what I'm going to write about. I'm scratching my head. So, anyways, I went to prison. It was brutal. It was like a tearing down of my psyche going to prison. I mean, I was in the Air Force and I was in the military for 6 years. And so a lot of people would say, well, you know, I was in the military and this, and it's kind of, no, it's not the same as prison. But anyways, it's not that they themselves, the guards in that tear you, it's like you are torn down to nothing by yourself because you're in there, and your only way of surviving is your survival instinct within you. So I struggled for a while, and a couple of months while I was in there, and I was in the library. The library is nothing more than a big walk-in closet. Okay, it's not like the public library here in town. We have a beautiful public library where I live. No, they just call this library. It's like a walk-in closet. They have a few books there, and the librarian is a prison guard. So I'm looking around for different things that I could. I'm going to explain it in detail like I did in my first book, because I want to kind of get to because this has been going on for a long time. I'm still scratching my head over this. But what happened is I was cruising around through the shelf in this walk-in closet called the library, and I was looking at different books, and they were old, outdated books. You could see that they were like donated books from different libraries around the state or the country or whatever that they bring to the prison system. And there was this old, in fact, I have it right here with me. I'm going to grab it. And I saw this book on the shelf. And you can see on the side of it, it says, I have it upside down. I think I do. It says A Course in Miracles, and there's tape all over it. And you can see it's kind of yellow stained from sitting in the library for all those years with, you know, smoking was going on and nicotine everywhere, and it's just yellow stained from age and everything. And on the front, you can still see it says A Course in Miracles. I was able to get this prison system, by the way, when I left. And I could even see on the side here, I've got my number, my name, and my number I had put on there with a pen, 542-280 over here, because of I was so in depth into my study in this. I was worried that people were going, other men in there that were, people get jealous if you're too into something, and they want to, I was afraid it was going to get stolen. Make a long story short, it's such a volatile and violent dent of the cell block, I like to call it. So anyways, this is the condensed version. It's not even the real version, but it's a huge volume, and it's very in-depth studies. I saw this blue sitting on the shelf in the library, and I'm like, what is this? I pulled it off. It slipped off the shelf, fell down, landed on my foot. I picked it and looked at it. A Course in Miracles. And I looked at this with tears and down. I said, so this is what you are, Course in Miracles. This is what you are. And I immediately checked this out of the library and kept it for the whole time. To make a long story short, I worked a deal out with the librarian, which is really a prison guard. Okay, it's not like a librarian like you think. I says, listen, all my life I've been looking for this book. I want to keep this with me the whole time. And it was in the, you can see back here where you can see back where the little pocket is in the library, where usually, the card sticks in, and there's a card stuck in there, and the guard ripped out of there before he let me have it. And it was like 10 years prior to me getting there that it was retrieved at the prison system, and no one since I got there in 2007 had checked it out of the library. So I dove into this, and I really started to find things. And by the way, as I started studying it, my I like to say the ego-based mind, the ego, it's all about fear and doubt and guilt, was coming to a head. And I mean, studying it, I would in prison, I would like, this is really deep. I don't know if I can absorb it. And a voice inside me just kept saying, just keep going, just keep reading it, just keep reading it. All of a sudden, after time, after months, I was making notes, and after I was looking at my notes, I says, "My gosh, I've got a book going here," and I was all doing it by handwritten. So, anyways, again, to make a long story short, this went on, and like I'd said in my first book called The Master of Everything, people can find the whole story on that. So, this here, A Course in Miracles, this old beat up thing that I found in prison, which a lot of people that are listening to this know what A Course in Miracles is, because it's a spiritual metaphysical study, lifelong study, similar to the Bible, not to replace the Bible. This is more abstract content to get your mind working, to overthrow all those fears and doubt and that guilt in us all as humans that hold us back in life for achieving what we want to achieve in life, which is really being connected to our source, which is God. It teaches us how this right here, in a certain way, you've got to put, it's a dot to dot kind of thing. You've got to put the dots together. So putting the dots together, I started writing my first book. Boom, my first book. I'm like, wow, it's done. Well, no, I wasn't done there. Now remember, I was facing 10 years in prison. So I'm like, okay. So the only way I could write these, I would use legal pad that we were able to get in a little store they call the commissary in prison. So I'd make notes and I would write and I'd scratch out and do my hand scratching and all that. And I'm like, I needed some journals. So a friend of mine on the outside, I was able to work this out with the warden of the prison. Hey, listen, I'm writing a book. I said to the warden, sir, very respectful I was. And my friend, I need journals to keep everything in neatly. So he approved it. I was able to get handwritten, not journals to write in, sent in from the outside from my friend. So he sent those journals in to me, and my hand scratching on the legal pad type of thing. Then I would transfer, once I got it right, one chapter at a time, or even one section of a chapter at a time. Once I got it right, I would move it into hand printed very neatly as I could into these composition journals, and that would be my equivalent of a manuscript and typing for the time being. So I would do that over and over. I got the first book. Okay, the long process. Then an urging was inside me. I got to continue this series with book 2. And I still have been kind of tears thinking about it today. So, there was a lot of things that, book 2 went in. So I had book 2 in the composition journals. Now, it's a couple years that still went by. Meanwhile, I'm still in prison, correct? Meanwhile, while I'm writing, I'm trying to figure out how to land a publisher to publish my work. So one day a week, I would write publishers a research that my friend sent to me called The Writer's Market. It's a publication about this thick, kind of like an old telephone book. And it lists almost every publisher and literary agent around the world. So I would write one day a week, like 10 letters a day or whatever I could do at that time, and say, hey, this is my situation, and I've got this going on, this book, and I have to tell people, they always wrote back to me, and I had enough rejection letters, I would say, to wallpaper the inside of the whole prison. All right, so this was going on, and I did this habitually once a week. Now I'm in my 8th year in prison. I'm still doing that. Now, by this time, I've got book 3 is written, book 4 is written, and book 5 is written. Okay, but in handwritten journals, no publisher. So I'm still doing this. So I get a letter, a response from Ozark Mountain Publishing Company, directly from Dolores Cannon. And Dolores Cannon says, tell me more about why we should offer you a contract. That's basically all I said. So whatever I said to her, I wrote her back and, basically explained my story. And she wrote back to me and says, we want to give you a contract with Ozark Mountain Publishing Company. Now, this was late 2014. I'm sorry if I said 2015, late 2014. So I'd already been in like 7 years now, going on 8 years in prison. So it was like a couple of days later, let's say maybe a week later, I got another offer from a literary agent in upstate New York that said, "We want to give you a contract." Now, believe me, this is like 7, 8 years later after me just diving into writing and sending off the publisher with no hope of it happening. But I knew I knew it was going to happen because what my studies were and what I was writing about was telling me that what I'm writing about needs to get out there. And it needs to be, I need to be sharing my story with people like you, Ed, okay, and everyone else. I got, there's a friend of mine, another friend of mine in Sarasota, Florida, a female friend, just a female friend, nothing more than that. And she, in fact, she has a husband, but she was good at typing and good at, did legal work and stuff like that too. So I wrote her a letter, says, "Listen, if I send you my manuscripts, can you put them into form for me?" And she said, yeah. Back now, by the time you write a letter to someone, they get it. It's another 10 days or weeks you get that letter back. Okay. So, anyways, by this time, I tell her, I wrote her back. Now I get two offers. One with Ozark Mountain Publishing Company. Can you look them up for me and find out more? And one from this literary agent in upstate New York. I don't want to mention their name because they're good people, very good people. I don't have approval to mention their name, but very good people. And that New York agency. And she looked them both up and said, and wrote me back. That's another 10 days or 2 weeks later. I get this back. And she says, "Well, you both of these people are good, but one's a literary agent and one's a mainstream publisher. So she says, what I can do, if you'd like, I'll call both of them for you." And she did. This girl, Carol, she called and she got on the phone with Dolores Cannon personally and talked to Dolores. Of course, we know Dolores is no longer with us. But Dolores was, so my Carol talked to Dolores. Dolores convinced Carol to write back to me and say, "Jim needs to come with us. Sure, the other literary agency is good, but he needs to come with us because we are the type of genre, type of things, what our books are about that will fit in to our library." And so Carol wrote me back and convinced me. Keep in mind, I never talked to Dolores at all. It's like, okay, boom, I'm sold. So Dolores, or whoever was running the show at Ozark Mountain at the time, sent me the contract. I signed it. I'm still in prison. I signed it, sent it back. I'm like, "Ed, you can't believe how elated I was." I still dream happily of this, that I had got an offer from prison for my books. So this was just exciting. I mean, this was like a feat that no typewriter, just handwritten, no computer at all in prison, no computer, no nothing. It was really, really life changing and something that, when I take my last breath, I'll still be thanking God for. So now in addition to all my work, I'm still working to get released from prison from a very inappropriate sentence that I was given of 10 years. Now I'm already in my 8th year. So I wrote to another lawyer in our town, in our area where I was from, that knew my case, but he in the beginning I had a bad lawyer. I didn't want to touch that because I don't want to go too deep on that. That's all in my first book. So I wrote to a different lawyer. Someone had suggested to me, and this was in my 8th year of prison. And he wrote me back, and I let him know. I said, "Listen, now at this time when I wrote this lawyer, my first book, The Master of Everything, was already published and was already on Amazon.com. It was already released. It was in the bookstores, online bookstores, and wherever book sold other way. It was already on sale, and I'm still in prison." Okay, so I let this lawyer know, and he wrote me back. It was like, 3 weeks later, and actually when I got the letter, in prison you get legal mail. Anything from a lawyer is legal mail. They can't own it. They have to call you in personally and hand it to you, and you have to sign for it. And it was Christmas Eve of 2014. Christmas Eve 2014. It was a weekday and the mail was running. I'm called to legal mail to go, and I get this letter back from the lawyer written to, and he said, I talked to the necessary prosecutors and the judge, and all believe that you need to release from prison immediately. So what a Christmas Eve present that was. So but in the letter he said, hang on, it's going to take a while. There's a little things on it. It took till March, which was 2015, until I was released, because of all the wheels of the justice system grind slowly, we all hear. So I was released in March 5th of 2015. The first thing I wanted to do when I got out of prison was to call Dolores Cannon and talk to her personally. So I'm anxious, I had to stay at a temporary place for a while. And then from there, I went and stayed with my parents, who were elderly, which was good because I was able to spend time with them until I could get on my feet. And they're not living anymore, but it was just a great time when I got out of prison, and it was like a nice reunion. So I was staying at my parents at the time, and I said, listen, I got to call. And they were sitting right on the phone with me. They knew what was going on. I'm like around me as I was calling Ozark Mountain. I said, hey, can I speak to Dolores? And I think it was Shonda at the time. She was working there. And she says, Dolores is not working with us anymore, or not with us anymore. I said, what do you mean she's not with us anymore? Well, she passed on. I said, what do you mean she passed on? Well, she passed on back in October, something like that. She passed on back in October. So what happened? She had a terrible fall. I said, well, nobody told me anything about this. I said, well, I'm contracted with you. She goes, well, this is Shonda saying, we didn't want to worry you while you were there. We knew you were going to be released soon because you were saying that, and we didn't want to worry you. We just wanted to remind you. We just didn't want to put much on you, basically, is what she had said. So I'm like, wow, I never did get to physically meet or talk to Dolores Cannon. Dolores Cannon is a key word now gone everywhere. I know people everywhere that know all about Dolores Cannon. So anyways, now I'm out of prison. 13 months later after that, I was in Ozark at the Ozark Mountain Transformation Conference in Eureka Springs, and that's where I met you. Does that ring a bell, Ed? So now from there, since then, at the time when I first met you, my first book, The Master of Everything, was the only one that was published and released at that time. So now we've got the second one, Mastering Your Own Spiritual Freedom, which is a sequel to the first one. And then after and then I knew my abundance, which is all about, I've told you before, I think before we started recording, I was telling you about the woman told me her story about her situation during the Bosnia-Croatia war, and here you were telling me about the same thing, and we talked about that. And so that's an amazing story, book 3. I mean, all these books are just so beautiful, because I was handwriting these. So anyways, now book 4 is now released, and book 5, called Each of You. And what an appropriate time for 4. It's a spiritual journey, shifting from darkness to light. And it really is helping us to shift from darkness to light, especially with everything that we're going through right now in the world. Excitement is just there. And so right now, it doesn't stop here. This is the latest that's out there, and everyone gets this book, because I know that once people read this book, A Journey from Shifting Through Darkness to Light, people will, I need to go read the first book, and I've written them that way. That I need to read a second book. I've written all the books in the series to where if someone picks up like book 5, for example, and they never read the other ones, they'll be okay. They can go back and, wow, now I need to read the other ones. So on the agenda, I'm at the typist right now. That it's still in journals, but I have a typist here locally where I live. I'm in Ohio right now. A college girl that's typing for me. She's typing book 6. So book 6 is fully typed, and then I do my own little personal edit on it. Then I'll let Ozark Mountain know that I've got it ready to go. And if they want to offer me another contract on that one, then they will, or they may not. But I'm sure that they will because you have a good relationship. But anyways, the point is that while I was away during those 8 years, I've got 16 books. This is the 5th one. Okay, so do the math. There's 16 books total. The rest of them are still in handwritten composition journals that need to put to manuscript form, acceptable by a publisher. And so that's where we're at now. And I talk a lot about, the world is on attack right now, especially in this 5th book, a spiritual journey through a shift through darkness to light. There's a lot of attack going on right now in the world, but we can only attack someone, and I emphasize in this book, you can only attack the body. Attack is physical in this world. Attack is, even if you have a thought about how you eat someone or something like that, that's still a physical thought. But it's physical, even though it's a thought. But it's attack is attack has limits to it, and I'm just thinking, but what it does is attack limits your passion for living. If I was attacking while I was in prison, the court system, spending all my time attacking the court system for wrongfully, I should have never went to prison. Everyone knows that based on my case. But if I spent my time attacking the judges and everyone that put me there, I would have been living my passion. I would have been leading myself into a dead end. My passion ended up being my purpose. So we need to learn to separate. And that's the spiritual journey from darkness to light, that each of you, and the reason it's called each of you is not like each person, not like each of you, like you and me. It's in you personally, Ed. There's each of you. There's that ego in you that is, and the ego's mind is filled with fear and doubt and judgment. Judgment may be like with me towards a corrupt judicial system that sent me to prison. If I spent my time hounding myself on that, I would be operating on that part of me. But instead, I learned how to let that go from the other side of me, each of you, which is guided by my heavenly divine Holy Spirit, God, if you will, that part of me. And it's so that's the whole gist of each of you is this book. Each of you is learning how to understand each of you. Now, come on, folks, for everyone listening to me, we all know, don't we, that when we get upset and angry and we yell at someone, or our wives, our females listen, your husbands, and afterward you have a little argument after, man, I shouldn't have talked that way. I shouldn't have said that, and then all of a sudden guilt comes in. Guilt. And see, that's all the ego. But when you say to yourself, I got to pull myself out of that. I don't need to be arguing with my spouse that way, or my neighbor, or someone. No, I need to just accept them for who they are. When we're thinking that way, that's the other side of each of you that's guiding you through to lead your passion and your purpose in life for what you really want to do. So it'd be the hard way. I was actually broken down severely, really broken down. mentally and mindfully. Mindfully is a word that I didn't really know at the time, but uh, see, while I was in prison, Ed, that's all I did. It was every day. I was studying the Course in Miracles. Of course, I'd find things in the Bible too, and I want people to know that because I've had asked me in the presentation I've given, do you think the Course in Miracles replace the Bible? Oh, not absolutely not. The Bible is a different thing. The Course in Miracles is very deep, abstract content. It's not filled with stories. It's just abstract context to trigger the mind to let you know that you are not just a body. You are more than that. You are more than just a body, and that's why you were here on Earth. And a lot more lessons too. It even goes down to why people die prematurely and things like that. That's all discussed in my books. So, um, as you can tell, I'm very excited about this series and where it's going because it keeps me going. And I can't believe that that prison thing is behind me because I thought it would never be over with. So I know I rambled on a little bit, Ed, but is there anything you would like to ask me maybe that I didn't cover?
Well, what I wanted to ask you regarding the book, is it a step process about a certain how to come to a certain conclusion about things, or is it more in story form? Can you maybe clarify that?
Well, it is. There's a little bit of form because I use examples of. In other words, I make a point. I'll do step form, like you're saying. Step form, how to get over this thing that you're going through, how to get over this thing you're going through. The next step, another thing you might be going through. Okay, with the fear and doubt and judgment and controlling anger and anxiety and depression and all that kind of stuff. Yes, I don't want to be too much of a preacher about that. Like I share stories about what I went through to get over that depression, that anxiety, that feeling crushed, that feeling running into a brick wall kind of thing, and how I got over that. So yes, there are stories, a lot of stories that I relate to while I'm in prison and what I'm up against, because the prison system like I'd said, is a truly volatile and violent place. So there's plenty of examples that I had to describe the ego versus the Holy Spirit in you. And I share a lot of my prison environment experiences in the whole series of books. Because now that I'm out of prison, I see, you know what? This was a good choice because to do that because the world we live in, if we can look at it as a prison, or we can look at it as heaven that God has given to us. We have a choice. Is the world imprisoning us, or is the world setting us free? How are we looking at it? So I hope that answers that question, Ed. A lot of stories.
Yeah, if know on top of your head one of them, can you maybe share one with us?
Well, I also have a lot of meditation examples too, that if you want. But well, of course, too. It's filled with stories. I mean, things I could go through. But there was a time when I was new to prison, and I was walking back from the dining hall. Okay, and I can the dining hall. Actually, we called it the chow hall. We marched to the chow hall, and we marched back to the chow hall, and you go back. Well, somebody hit me on the back of the head with a copper pipe. That he worked in maintenance. Everybody has a job. If you want to have a job, you don't really get paid. You just something to do to fulfill your time. Well, he stole a pipe like a plumbing pipe, copper and plumbing. And prior to that, there's gangs in there. They were trying to recruit me into the gangs. And there's there's three types of ways of going through prison. You're either on your own, by yourself, solo, okay, or you're under protection gang, okay, or you're in another group of people that fight the gangs. So you got people fighting the gangs, and you got gangs that are fighting the people that are fighting the gangs, and then you got people that decide to go solo. I was solo. So the gangs are trying to recruit people that are solo, and so are the people fighting the gangs trying to recruit people to be on their side. And if you just say, no, I'm going solo, they can make it rough on you until you prove your point. So there was a day I had to prove my point to a couple of people that approached me saying they want me in the gang, or they want me in this other set of group here, which it's still gangs everywhere. I mean, one gang says they're nicer than the other gang. It's still gangs membership. I said, no, I'm on my own. No, you sure you want to do that now? You won't be. No, I want to. So anyways, I got hit on the back of the head, and I got a big gash in the back of my head. And next thing I knew, I was a guard came and picked me up, and the medical staff came and they took me to the infirmary, and I had about 6 stitches in the back of my head right up here. So from there, after I'm healed up and that, I don't go back to where your normal bunk is. They send you to the hole. The hole. Everybody heard about the hole in prison. Why would I go to the hole? I even said that. They said, we got to take you to the hole. I said, why? I didn't do anything wrong. We can't let you go back to your normal bunk until we get to the bottom of this. So what happened for your safety? So I had to go to the hole. So I spent 11 days in the hole. So while I'm in the hole, after about 7 days, there was a man in a cell next to me, and the hole is a very scrawny little cell that can hold 2 people. But for that time, I was only by myself. It's kind of a long, narrow thing, but can hold 2 people. And a lot of them do have 2 people. So there was a guy put in the hole next to me, in a cell next to me. And he had said that he would clang on the wall next to me, and there's a food slot down below in the door, and he would say, hey, can you tell me who your name is, or tell me what you're about? And I told him my story. He was in Steve was his name, and he said he was in for burglary. He was doing a 6-year sentence. He was almost out in a couple of months, but he wasn't cooperating with the gangs either, and I was new to prison, so I never even saw his face. Or side by side in a cell, concrete wall between us. You can't see him. There's no bars between, concrete wall. And so we're communicating to each other through the food slot down by the door. So he's given me, new to prison. He's been there. He's given me some information about what I need to expect about the gang and everything. And he says, you know what you did? You're doing your bones right now. I'm like, what's that mean, earning your bones? Of course, he was, in for a while, and he knew the lingo, and I didn't. And so he explained that to me, and we went maybe through that whole day and would communicate through the food slot down below. Like a day or two later, another person was sent into that cell next to me with Steve. And a little bit later, I heard a bunch of pounding going on and Steve crying on the steel door. The steel door is like a solid steel door with just a narrow window, and then down below is a food slot. I get pounding on the door. What ended up happening is, to make a long story short, is that one guy that was put in there with Steve had beaten him to death, slammed his head against the steel door. And Steve was crying out, and all of a sudden it went silent. I didn't know what I just told you, until afterwards later. So anyways, a few minutes later, now I'm looking through the food slot, because that narrow window on the cell door, I can't hardly look this way. Food slot was kind of diagonal this way. I could, look through, and it was like 10 minutes later, people from the infirmary were coming by, and it was silent in there, and they threw this young guy out. He was a black guy, and I'm not trying to be prejudiced, but young black, because there's a lot of prejudice in prison is the only reason I mentioned that. A lot of white and blacks against each other in the gangs. But they threw a young guy, a very young guy, threw him out in a hallway and handcuffed him, took him away, the guy that was beating Steve. And it was quiet. A couple minutes later, I'm looking through the food slot down below, and they're taking Steve out, an attorney with a sheet covered up over his head. So he was dead. And he only had like a little short of time to finish, like I think it was 6-7 year prison sentence, something like that. And he was almost to the end of that. He never made it out. So, of course, they called me and wanted to ask me if I heard anything or said anything. And from what Steve was telling me, the man that was killed, the best thing I could do was just really kind of say nothing. Because according to me, I was in like my 6 months in prison. For me, I'm looking at 9.5 years yet. So it's as if you tell the guards what you hear and what you heard, and now all of a sudden it gets out to the population of the gangs and everything, then you are labeled a snitch. And that's not a good way to live the next 7, 8, 9.5 years of your prison sentence. So, of course, I got out after 8, thanks to a forgiving judge from a higher court. Now, keep that in mind, what I just said, when we talk about our spirituality, about where we're from inside. All that work I was doing inside of me, all stuff writing and doing what I needed to do, in landing a publisher in my 8th year, higher court overruled a lower to free me. Think about that. A higher court over a lower court said he needs to come out of prison.
So, James, I wanted to ask you then. So, based on the story you told me, what did you gather from that, other than just not to speak? Was it then this different understanding you gained from that?
Misunderstanding that I gave what? Did you say that again?
No, I was asking the story you just told. So, other than learning not to potentially get yourself more in trouble with the rest of the gangs, what was that kind of that higher understanding that you gained from that?
Well, the higher understanding was that that we're all connected. We're all connected as one. And when we are filled with fear and doubt, guilt, we're separating ourselves from each other. And Steve, who was sharing with me what he felt that I needed to know, was also being one with me. He never met me physically. We never shook hands. I don't know what he looked like. We were separated concrete. He was on the right side cell. Never met him. It would have been different if it was like someone I knew outside of the hole, where I was in population and I talked to face every day. Never met this guy. So he was acting though he was telling me what I needed to do to get through that 9.5 years. Of course, the first thing Steve asked me when you're talking, when you get to know him, especially if you don't see him face to face, one of the lines is, "How much time are you doing?" He say through the food slot, "I'm doing 10 years. How long you been in?" "Just got here. I'm 6 months." Oh my God. So there was, to me, divine intervention right there. Steve was a man I never saw, okay, telling me what I need to watch out for, understanding what earning your means. He let me know you already earned your bones. He knew in our discussion through the food slot, he hit on the back of the head here and had stitches put in there, and this. And so he's like, well, now you've earned your bones. What do you mean earn your bones? I'm still like, out of this. No, you earned your bones. Now, basically, they're going to let go of you now. The gang's not going to bother you anymore. Because basically, that means when earning your bones means you stood your ground. And so they know for the gangs know that leave that guy alone. No, no, no. He can't worry with him because if they would keep messing with me, and they would jeopardize what they're going after in their gangs. So their best thing to do is leave me alone. And that's what Steve was trying to say to me, to just leave me alone. I mean, that they would leave me alone. And so the best, now, if I would have made a huge statement to the guards, what I heard and detail, like trying to, like be inside of the guards and everything, and it would get out, then I would have never have earned my bones. They would not have left me alone. So actually, we can say that Steve, the guy in the cell next to me, saved my life, can we say?
Right. Well, James, so in conclusion, is there anything else you would like to finish up with?
Well, no, I want to express to the readers of Ozark Mountain Pub Company that it is a great, great publishing company that's focused on publishing the right kind of material that helps people get through their life and experience kind of things like I've experienced. Not that I was a bad person before. No, I wasn't. I did a lot of right things. But we can easily slip into a stumbling block or hit that brick wall. So I want to encourage people listening to this to honor all the authors at Ozark Mountain Publishing Company and really honor this company. And I hope that you'll read my books. I would love my reader. My perfect reader would be to buy book 1, then read book 2, book 3, book 5, and book 6 coming out. But if you don't and you stumble across it and you see book 5 wherever you shop or you're online, I can almost guarantee you that if you fall in love with a book, you're gonna say, I got to go back and read book 1. I got to go back and read book 1. So book 6 is coming out. What I say to my readers is that, I think we're lacking truth in the world now, Ed. And that's where we're going on. Where everyone knows what's going on. That's why I subtitled this A Spiritual Journey Shifting from Darkness to Light. In other words, the light is the truth. We're shifting out of falsehoods and BS and all that kind of stuff that our governments are involved with. And I don't want to be political, and I'm not political in my books, but we are in a darkness, falsehood kind of period of time. And now I see that as this book's coming out, that our country, the world, we're shifting out of darkness and we're shifting into light. Where, hey, is there such thing as world peace? I believe so. Anything?
Well,
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, well, thank you very much for that. I will certainly in the description below this video have all the links to your sites and books, and I'm glad we're able to do this today. And so hopefully, whenever another opportunity comes up, we get to talk again.
Yes, I can be found at jamesnussbaumer.com. I have a website, and of course at ozarkmountainpublish2.com. So yes, and I'm on Facebook, Twitter. People that don't know me can easily access me. And I'm finding that I'm getting an online popularity good here. So you could just, key in my name, James, Nussbaumer, James Nussbaumer, and author James Nussbaumer. And you'll see me.
All right.
So I'm just hoping, one last thing, Ed, I just
sure.
really, there's a lot of transformation people are going through right now in the world, and especially in the United States of America, and are having a difficulty with that. I feel that my transformation was done while I was in prison, but I'm still going through that. Those, but I feel those kind of times are behind me. I feel as though that there are people that are going to experience hard mental time like that with what's coming in the world. But we're going to get through this if we understand each of you, if we understand each of you inside, the ego, fear, and doubt within you versus the holy divine spirit within you that knows you're protected for eternity. I hope that makes sense, Ed.
It does. Well, James, thanks very much again. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk again.
All right. Thanks, Ed.
All right. Bye bye.